Well, hi folks, welcome back to the final instalment of my story. And just before we leave America, I would like to tell you Eric's story, just as a sample of the many lives that God changed in our time in Wisconsin. Eric came to my office one evening, and the first impression I got was black. Everything about Eric was black. Every stitch of clothing was black. His, bags under his eyes were black. His arms were tattooed all the way up and down with black tattoos. And I'm saying, wow, Eric, so nice to meet you. What brings you to my office tonight? And he says, Pastor, to be honest, I'm not sure. I says, could I hazard a guess? He says, sure. He was always very respectful. I says, you're a man of the world. You've been out there. You've been round the block several times. You've seen what the world has to offer out there. And you're in my office tonight because your soul still isn't satisfied. He nodded his head and he said, I couldn't have put it better myself, Pastor. So I says, before you put a red pen through Christianity, you need to investigate it and then make up your mind, Eric. So that started an adventure together weekly, just feeding his fertile mind with the basics of the gospel, creation, God's sovereignty, and a whole wonderful range of stuff. And I could see that the Holy Spirit was really beginning to work on his heart, and it was very, very exciting. And I had a big prayer point because Easter Sunday was a major outreach for us when we really pulled in the net and saw many come to faith. And my prayer was that God would speak to Eric on Easter Sunday. But he always, on this 6-month journey, he always had a problem. I would say, God, I threw Jeremiah 29 at him. You seek me, you will find me if you seek me with all your heart. And I says, God will speak to you, Eric. He says, he's no speaking to me, John. He says, this is a problem. So anyway, we hired out the biggest venue in town, Capital Civic Theatre, for our Easter services. And in the foyer of the theatre, there was dozens of people milling around on that Sunday morning. People would come into town, relatives and friends for Easter weekend, and we would greet them, and it was fantastic before we got going with the service. And suddenly, coming through, quite a bit down the corridor, I see this face. I'd never seen a change in a complexion like it. It was Eric. And as quickly as I could, I made my way through the crowd. And I embraced him. And I says, Eric, have you got something to say to me? He says, I certainly have, PJ. He says, I got up before dawn this morning, went down the lake shore, out on the pier and watched the sun come up. And he says, guess what? God spoke to me. And he says, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe that he died for my sin. And I believe that he rose again that first Easter Sunday. And I'm here to celebrate. And folks, it was overwhelming. Joy was unbelievable. And I says, Eric, come on in and worship with us this morning. And that started a very deep friendship that exists to this very day. Eric has had so many problems in his life that one by one God has taken care of. And we email back and forth to this very day. Just a special example of the many people that we were able to help from rural Wisconsin. Now, our overall pain in ministry, I've mentioned this before, I think, our cross to bear, if you like, has been separation from loved ones. So in 2016, it was like deja vu. Here we go again. Because I really felt in my heart that we had to return and retire to the old country, where my oldest son, Stuart, and his wife and 4 kids live currently. But the pain was real. Here we were leaving a large group of believers that loved us. And more to the point as well, 2 of my 3 children and 5 of my 9 grandchildren. So that was and is very, very hard, folks. We tried to mitigate that by an annual 6-week visit in the summer, and guess what? That has been scuppered this year by COVID-19. So these precious grandchildren we haven't seen for 15 months. But here we are, we're back, and we settled nearby Stuart, our oldest boy, in Reading area of Falkirk, just 5 minutes along the road from him. And we we were always invested in the local church, so we joined Madison Evangelical Church. And David Campbell and his wife Liz lead the charge there. They're full-time in ministry and have a wonderful work in the community. So that's where we worship. And when I got back, the word got out that John was back, and increasingly a number of churches would ask me to preach and to help them. And while I understood the privilege of that and helped where I could, I wasn't really at ease in my spirit about it. And so I sensed another God moment coming. And this time it was on one of our most recent visits to our youngest son Graham in North Carolina. I'm sitting on his deck overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, and I'm having this conversation with God, and it went something like this. God said to me, "Did I call you in 1989? And I said, "Lord, I've never had a shadow of doubt about that. I'm humbled even to this day." Second question, have I ever rescinded that call? No. Third question, have you got any gas left in the tank? And I said, well, a little bit. And then I just sensed God saying, well, get on with it. Okay, so that was settled. I came back home after a 6-week visit to the States, and within a week, John Campbell, one of the founding members of the church here at Craig Albert, calling me and saying, we really would like you to consider joining the pastoral team here at Craig Albert, John. And to cut a long story short, I joined the team. I was absolutely thrilled. It seemed such a good fit for both parties. Here was the thing. I couldn't believe that once more I was hooking up with my buddy from View Park, John Dick, who way back then was just a wild teenager and now is a mature servant of God leading the charge here at Craig Albert. And I'm going, yes, there is a God in heaven. And it's just been an absolute joy working in that pastoral team with John and with Alistair Noble too. It's just been an absolute blast. We feel right now kind of frustrated, obviously, with COVID-19, what it has done. But I would say, folks, we daren't question the Lord because he's up to something new for sure. Having said that, I really loved the year that we had together in Craig Albert before coronavirus struck. What a joy it has been to work with you all. These pastors that I've mentioned, but also the new elders leadership team is so united and such a joy to work with. Here are my highlights. I loved the 9 baptisms that took place on our first Easter Sunday together. I love our new vision statement of grow, go and show. I loved teaching my Connections discipleship class for the first time in Scotland, which so many of you attended. And I honestly can't wait to get fully back in harness together to make more disciples as Jesus instructed us to do. So let me close this out, folks. My story really is about an extraordinary God who does amazing things through ordinary people. And I just want to finish by sharing with you one of my life verses. And it's from the Old Testament, Micah chapter 6, verse 8. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That's what God requires of all of us, folks. To act justly, do what's right, live for righteousness. The truth still matters in a society just saturated now with fake news. The truth still matters. So Micah's word to us all today, tonight, is act justly, do what's right. Second, love mercy. That's the heart of the Father. That's who He is in essence. He loves to forgive. He shows mercy again and again to us. That's what we've to be like. We haven't just to tolerate it and put up with it, arm up our back because we know that God requires it. No, we've to love mercy. Jesus never envisaged a disciple of His who was unwilling to forgive. So that's the second thing. We've to do justly, we've to love mercy, and finally, we've to walk humbly with our God. Notice walk. That entails movement. So we don't get stuck in a rut, we don't sit, we walk. We move intentionally forward. We do it humbly. So much of God's work is hindered through pride. So we've got to humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God and walk humbly each day with Him. If we do that, then God will use you every bit as much as He has used me. So, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. You do that, and God will use you too. And remember this, God needs you too. God bless you.